This is R2D Tech and we're back again with another video today, this time about the Razer Blade Stealth, so stay tuned. The Razer Blade Stealth is quite an interesting laptop because it's one of the first 13-inch Ultrabooks where you can actually get quite a decent graphics card in the laptop itself, which is pretty exciting for gamers and content creators. Razer have recently brought out a model that includes the GTX 1650 Ti, but we're going to be talking about all the models that are available right now, so let's get into it. Firstly, let's start with the design, and it comes in two different finishes, either mercury white or the classic matte black. Now, I should mention that with the mercury white model, it only comes with certain specs, which is a bit annoying. However, both finishes look pretty incredible either way. Now looking at the actual body of the laptop, it is the aluminium unibody design, which feels really rock solid, kind of similar to Apple's MacBooks, which also have really good build quality. One thing I should mention is that with the matte black model, if you do scratch it, the aluminium will show quite clearly underneath, so that is one thing to bear in mind. So you might want to get a case or a skin. One more thing to mention is that the matte black model will show fingerprints really easily, so you might want to keep a microfiber cloth handy. So let's talk about the display now, and there are three options depending on which variation you go for. You can either go for the Full HD non-touch display, which is 60 Hz, the Full HD non-touch display, which is 120 Hz, and then the 4K touch, which is 60 Hz. If you're a gamer, I recommend going for the 120 Hz FHD display. If you're a content creator, you might want to go for the 4K model. However, the FHD model does look pretty good anyway. All these screens have a 16:9 aspect ratio, which is a little bit annoying. We're seeing more and more laptops shift to 3:2 or 16:10 aspect ratios. So it would have been nice to see that on this generation. However, it is still a really good looking screen. The high aspect ratio just means that you would be able to fit more on the screen for productivity, which is always good. Moving on to the keyboard now, and it is pretty much unchanged from the last generation. It's still really comfortable to type on and offers a good amount of key travel. It does also have RGB, however the whole keyboard has to be lit by one color instead of being able to change individual keys, which is slightly annoying. However, personally I don't care about RGB that much. The touchpad is also unchanged. It's nice and big for a 13-inch laptop. It is also really accurate and smooth. It's using Windows Precision drivers, which are the best drivers for Windows laptops, so that's also good to see. So let's move on to the specs now, and talking about the processor. In all the newest models, you're going to be getting the Intel Core i7 1065G7 processor, which is a quad-core Ultrabook processor. Now for a 13-inch Ultrabook, you're going to be getting a really good amount of performance here. Now it's obviously not going to offer the same amount of performance as you would get in some of the 15-inch powerhouse laptops like the Dell XPS 15 or the Razer Blade 15. However, I think for a 13-inch laptop, it's a pretty good deal. If you do push the laptop really hard, you will hear the fan spinning up and the laptop will get quite hot. However, that's kind of to be expected. For RAM and storage, the only option for RAM is 16 gigs, which is not user replaceable. It's soldered onto the motherboard, which is a little bit annoying. However, 16 gigs should be fine for a good few years. For the storage, you can either choose from a 256 gig SSD or a 512 gig SSD, and that is user replaceable, so you can replace it easily if you want to. So let's talk about the graphics cards options now. You can either choose from the integrated Intel Iris Plus graphics, or a GTX 1650 or a GTX 1650 Ti. So the last two options are especially interesting because you rarely see decent graphics cards inside 13-inch laptops. Now, they're not the highest end graphics cards, and you're definitely not going to be able to play the highest end games with high frame rates. However, if you're willing to crank your settings down, then many of the newer high end games will be playable on this laptop. That by itself, I think, is really impressive. 4K video editing will also be possible on this laptop, which is really good news for content creators. Now, I did mention earlier that with the Mercury White option, there will be limited spec options, and unfortunately, you will only get the option of the Intel Iris Plus graphics, a 256 gig SSD, and the Full HD 60Hz non-touch display. As I mentioned earlier, that is quite annoying. However, if you really want the Mercury White option, then that's the trade-off. Moving on, let's talk about the battery, and you do get a 53.1 watt hour battery, which is quite reasonable for a 13-inch laptop. Obviously, your battery life will vary depending on what your usage case is. If you get the 4K touch model or the FHD 120Hz display, then you will see a much shorter battery life than the Full HD 60Hz display. Also, obviously, if you're using that graphics card for games or video editing, then you will also see a much shorter battery life. I would say on average you would be looking at around 6.5 to 7 hours of battery life, which is reasonable for an Ultrabook. So for ports on this laptop, you do get two USB-C ports, one of which supports Thunderbolt 3 on the right, and also two USB-A ports. Now you can charge the laptop through either USB-C ports with the included 65 watt charger, which is nice to see. And also having those two USB-A ports is a very nice change from some of Apple's laptops where you only get USB-C ports. It would have been even nicer to see even more ports. However, this is kind of the direction where the industry is heading with less ports on laptops. For security, you are getting Windows Hello facial recognition, which is really convenient. I would have liked to have seen a fingerprint reader as well. I personally prefer fingerprint readers on laptops. I just feel it's more convenient. However, Windows Hello is still really helpful. Out of the box, it is running Windows 10, and that's probably the best operating system for gamers. And you probably have a preference between Windows 10 and macOS or one of the Linux distros, but that's probably a topic for another video. So overall, I think the Razer Blade Stealth is a really exciting machine. You're getting really good build quality, really good specs, and a pretty incredible design. However, all of this does come with a cost, and that cost is quite high, starting at £1,300 roughly. That model will get you Intel Iris Plus graphics, the Full HD 60Hz display, and 256 gigs of storage, as well as the quad-core i7 processor. The price goes all the way up to just over £2,000 with the GTX 1650 Ti, a 4K touch display, and 512 gigs of storage, as well as the quad-core i7 processor. For an Ultrabook, that is a pretty high price to pay, and you're definitely going to be able to find machines with much more bang for your buck. However, if you really care about the design and the other features that you get with this laptop, then it is still a pretty incredible machine. That's it from this video. If you liked it, please press the thumbs up button. If you loved it, please consider subscribing.